You're listening to Everything Out There with your host, Steve Stockton.
Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Thanks once again for joining me on Everything Out There. Tonight, our guest is Tattooed Biker from the YouTube channel Tattooed Biker Unexplained. In the interview, we're going to talk about some haunting tales and spooky legends of North Carolina, where he was originally from. Now, North Carolina, with its rich history and diverse landscapes, has been a breeding ground for eerie folklore and spine-chilling legends that have been passed down through generations. From the mist-covered mountains to the haunted coastal plains, North Carolina is steeped in stories that send shivers down the spines of those who dare to listen. In this interview, we'll delve into some of these haunting tales that have woven themselves into the fabric of North Carolina's folklore. A few of them are the Brown Mountain Lights, which we speak about. Nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Brown Mountain has been the stage for one of North Carolina's most enduring mysteries, the Brown Mountain Lights. For centuries, locals and visitors alike have reported witnessing unexplained lights dancing in the night sky. Now, legend suggests that these spectral lights are the souls of ancient Cherokee warriors still wandering the mountainside. Others believe it to be the lanterns of ghostly Confederate soldiers searching for lost comrades. Despite numerous investigations, the origin of the Brown Mountain Lights remain elusive, contributing to the mountain's eerie reputation. Now, I've seen these lights myself on several occasions, and I have no rational explanation. Another light in North Carolina is the Maco Light. In the coastal town of Maco, a railroad worker named Joe Baldwin met a tragic end in the late 1800s. Legend has it that he was decapitated in a railway accident while trying to warn an oncoming train of a washed-out track. The locals claim that Baldwin's ghost, carrying a lantern in search of his missing head, can be seen along the tracks at night. The mysterious light, known as the Maco Light, has been a source of fascination and fear for generations, drawing curious onlookers hoping to catch a glimpse of the wandering spirit. Another place we talk about is the Devil's Tramping Ground, or the Devil's Stomping Ground. Nestled in the woods near the town of Siler City is a mysterious and unsettling place known as the Devil's Tramping Ground. Now, the legend tells of a barren, circular patch of land, about 40 feet or so, where nothing grows. It's said that this is the spot where the devil himself paces in circles, plotting his sinister schemes to foil mankind. Locals claim that anything left within the circle overnight will be mysteriously moved by morning. Some even believe the devil's presence prevents plant life from growing, while others warn that spending a night within the circle invites the devil's influence into one's life. Another mysterious legend from North Carolina is the Gray Man of Pawleys Island. Along the shores of Pawleys Island, a spectral figure known as the Gray Man is said to appear as a harbinger of impending storms. Now, according to legend, the Gray Man is the ghost of a young man who died in a shipwreck on his way to visit his fiancée. The story goes that he appears on the beach to warn residents of the approaching danger, providing them with a chance to evacuate before the storm hits. And if you've ever seen one of those storms in the Outer Banks, they are spectacular. Those who claim to have seen the Gray Man insist that he is a benevolent spirit, offering protection to those who heed his spectral warning. Another strange legend from North Carolina is the legend of the vampire beast of Bladenboro. In the 1950s, the small town of Bladenboro was gripped by fear as reports circulated of a mysterious creature which attacked local pets and livestock. Some described it as a large panther-like creature with glowing red eyes. The vampire beast of Bladenboro, whatever it was, left a trail of unease in its wake. Residents were terrified, and local hunters set out to capture the creature. However, despite their best efforts, the true identity and nature of the beast remained elusive, leaving the town haunted by the memory of the vampire beast that prowled its streets. Now there's also the legend of the Dismal Swamp. The Great Dismal Swamp, which straddles the border between North Carolina and Virginia, is shrouded in a history of mystery and folklore. The swamp's dense vegetation and murky waters have fueled tales of ghostly apparitions and otherworldly encounters. Some stories speak of phantom lantern lights leading wanderers deeper into the swamp, while others tell the spirits of escaped slaves seeking refuge during the antebellum period. The Dismal Swamp, with its eerie ambience, remains a place where reality blurs with the supernatural, leaving visitors with an unsettling sense of the unknown. And then there's the ghost ship of Ocracoke. Part of the Outer Banks, a favorite place of mine to visit, is the location of Ocracoke Island, which is home to the chilling tale of the ghost ship known as the Carroll A. Deering. In 1921, this 5-masted schooner ran aground without a soul on board. The crew had vanished, leaving behind only cryptic messages and signs of a struggle. Locals believe that the ghostly apparitions of the crew still haunt the shores of Ocracoke, forever trapped in a spectral limbo. The mystery of the Carroll A. Deering has fueled speculation and ghostly sightings, making it one of North Carolina's most enduring maritime legends. And then who can forget the legend of the Moon-Eyed People? In the misty mountains of western North Carolina, there exists the legends of a mysterious race known as the Moon-Eyed People. According to Cherokee folklore, these beings had pale, moon-like eyes and lived underground. The Moon-Eyed People were said to be peace-loving, but their existence was threatened by the arrival of the Cherokee. As tensions rose, the Moon-Eyed People vanished into the mountains, leaving behind only the echoes of their enigmatic presence. Some believe that their spirits still linger in the remote corners of the Appalachians, guarding the secrets of their ancient civilization. There's also the haunting of the Grove Park Inn. Nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the historic Grove Park Inn is known for its luxurious accommodations and stunning views. However, some visitors have reported encounters with supernatural entities within its walls. The Pink Lady, a ghostly figure dressed in pink, is said to roam the inn's hallways, leaving behind the scent of her flowery perfume. Some believe she's the spirit of a young woman who tragically fell to her death from a balcony, while others suggest she is a lovelorn guest who never checked out. The ghostly presence of the Pink Lady adds an extra layer of intrigue to the already rich history of the Grove Park Inn. Another Cherokee legend from North Carolina is the Wampus Cat. Deep in the heart of Cherokee folklore lies the legend of the Wampus Cat, a fearsome creature said to stalk the Appalachian Mountains. According to the tales, the Wampus Cat was once a beautiful Cherokee woman who, driven by jealousy, used forbidden magic to transform into a half-woman, half-mountain lion creature. The Wampus Cat is believed to prowl the woods, emitting an eerie cry that chills those who hear it. Some claim that encountering the Wampus Cat brings bad luck, while others warn that it's a guardian spirit protecting the secrets of the ancient Cherokee lands. And then there's the cursed town of Bath. Now, Bath is one of North Carolina's oldest towns, and it harbors a dark and mysterious history that some believe is cursed. Legends tell of Blackbeard the pirate who once frequented the town, burying his treasure in the nearby Pamlico River. Locals claim that the town's misfortunes, including hurricanes and fires, are a result of the pirate's curse. To this day, some say they've seen Blackbeard's ghost walking the shores, forever guarding his hidden treasure and ensuring the continuation of Bath's troubled legacy. And then who can forget Roanoke Island? Roanoke Island, forever etched in history as the site of the mysterious lost colony, is itself steeped in ghostly legends. The first English settlement in America, the Roanoke colony, disappeared without a trace, leaving only the word Croatoan carved into a tree. Locals report sightings of ghostly colonists and strange occurrences, with some claiming that the spirits of the lost settlers still roam the island, searching for their long-lost companions. The enigma of the lost colony continues to cast a haunting shadow over Roanoke Island. In conclusion, as the wind whispers through the forest and the waves lap against the shores, North Carolina's spooky folklore and legends continue to weave a tapestry of mystery and intrigue. From ancient spirits to cursed towns, from phantom lights to the devil's tramping ground, the state's rich cultural heritage is interwoven with stories that both terrify and captivate. As night falls and shadows dance across the landscape, the tales of the Tar Heel State linger, inviting those brave enough to explore the realm where reality and the supernatural seamlessly blend. And joining me tonight is Tattooed Biker from the YouTube channel Tattooed Biker Unexplained. Hey, brother, how you doing?
Hey, well, Steve, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. We're gonna have a good time tonight and talk some scary stuff. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel, Tattooed Biker Unexplained.
Well, it's something I always wanted to do. It started out horror fiction, creepypastas, and stuff like that, but I just really wasn't too into those, But, finding materials really tough, starting out. Then I went to look at my audience tab, my YouTube analytics, and it seemed like my entire audience, I was the only horror fiction that they listened to. And I thought, well, great. I don't have to do this anymore. It seemed like they were all watching like your channel or Bigfoot Case Files or Buckeye Bigfoot or Dixie Cryptid and I thought, well, or a haunting. A lot of them were listening to a haunting, that YouTube channel, which is I think it just replays the old TV show. So I thought, well, this is cool. So I don't have to do horror fiction for my audience anymore because it's fun once in a while, but if you start doing it for a channel, I think it just feels like a grind after a while. It's not as interesting to me as the paranormal stuff, the true stuff, and the unexplained. And I love a good mystery, so that seemed like the
And that's
direction
part
I
of
my
it, I
channel.
think, is doing something that you love, and then it doesn't seem like work, and it doesn't get to be as much of a grind sometimes, but it can weigh on you, especially when you have a real pigeonhole like that you put yourself in. That's all you can do. That's one reason I have so many different channels. I've got so many different interests. Instead of just putting it all on one, I've tried to spread it out, and it means more work, but then I'm still true to myself as far as what I enjoy doing and when I want to do it. So works out good.
Yeah, and I post Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday is always Gone Missing Mondays. I do where you tend to do very current cases, open cases. I tend to do really old cold case file cases where people have gone missing and there's something strange, unusual, or unexplained about the disappearance. It doesn't quite fit. I cover those and I make a little mini documentary about a case every Monday. And then as far as Wednesday and Friday, I try to do viewer submissions of paranormal, cryptid encounters, UFOs, just something unexplained that's happened in their lives, their personal true stories. And I try to do those on Wednesday and Friday. Sometimes it works out. There has been a few times, my channel's smaller, that I would do like a paranormal mini documentary. Like I think I did the Bell Witch one time, and I did Robert Johnson, things like that, to sort of fill in the gaps when I didn't have as many submissions. But now I'm getting them regularly enough that I usually Wednesday and Friday I can do nothing but viewer submissions. So that's worked out well, and I've had some real doozies over there.
Yeah, love those viewer submissions. I've got a podcast coming up where I'm going to do those, and it's amazing some of the stories that people tell. And we were talking before the show, a lot of those, I don't vet them. I just take people at their word because I've had some things happen to me that if I just told them to somebody, it sounds unbelievable, but I was there. I know what I saw, felt, experienced, or whatever. So it is what it is. And I think a lot of times when people send in their stories, that other people hear that and they had a similar encounter or something strange happened to them, and it kind of frees them up to tell their story. They're like, I thought you'd think I was crazy, but I heard so and so's story, so here's mine. And I love that part. Just it's a way to grow that community and for people to share their experiences and find out, yeah, that a lot of people have these.
And that's another fascinating thing is sometimes you'll hear a story that sounds completely bizarre and completely um you've never heard anything like it. They saw something and the way they're describing it, it doesn't fit into anything else you've heard. And then before you even do, you include it in the show, you're reading your email, and then someone else, maybe across the country, who have no contact with the one you just read, well, they're talking about a similar thing. And you're thinking, what are the chances and what's really out there that these people are seeing separate from each other, but their accounts are lining up so closely, you know?
Yeah, and,
So,
and I love that too. We looked into some cases here in New England. There's a UFO incident in the Berkshires, and the witnesses, the different walks of life, didn't know each other, lived miles and miles apart, but they saw pretty much the same thing on the same night, and almost described it exactly the same. I mean, it's too much to be a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence anyway. I think synchronicities, but those are the cases that fascinate me, where several witnesses saw it at about approximately the same time, and their stories match up.
right. Like when I was looking into the Dover Demon, this thing apparently cut a swath, through the area, and you've got witnesses describing the same thing that are 50 miles apart. And it's very odd. It makes you wonder just what were they seeing out there.
Yeah,
So
and that's one of my favorite pet cases, if you will. I've been to Dover. Actually, it's back in the '80s, not too long after it happened. I think that happened in like '78 or '79, somewhere around in there. Well, I had a friend. I graduated high school in '81. Had a friend that I graduated with that went to NYU, and I went and couch surfed there for 3 months in the East Village. And one weekend, some people from NYU that they knew said, "Hey, I know where there's a house party in Massachusetts. Let's go." So I went with them, and we're in this place. And hey, I'm in Dover, and I said something about, oh, home of the Dover Demon, and they're like, "Oh, you want to talk to Bill?" And I don't know which one it was. There was two witnesses. One of them went by Bill, and the other one was named William, but he may have been Bill too. But I actually met one of the witnesses from it, just happenstance, like that at a house party. And he basically, I talked to him a little. He seemed kind of embarrassed by the whole thing, that I knew about the story and knew the notoriety and stuff, but he told pretty much the same story that I'd read. So I think there's something there, but I love those one-offs like that, where I think that one happened over just a couple of days, a handful of witnesses, they all saw and described pretty much the same thing. What in the world was that? Do you have an opinion on it? Do you think it was some sort of cryptid or some kind of creature that we're not aware of? Is it UFO related? What's your thought on it?
if I had to take a wild guess, I would say it was UFO related, just because there's never been anything else like it seen, you know? Like with most cryptids, you find multiple reports in multiple places. Like you said, this is a one-off, it's like the Flatwoods monster. It happened one time, multiple witnesses, and it's never been seen again.
Yeah, that's one, and I've been to that area too. I wouldn't want to see that one. That one, just the drawing of it scares the pants off of me. And I've got a couple of pastors that I've interviewed a few times, and in fact, they're going to be on with me again probably next week. They look at UFOs and the unexplained and things like that from a biblical perspective, and they're convinced that the Flatwood monster was either a fallen angel or Nephilim or some kind of demonic entity. And I don't doubt that. That thing is just absolutely frightening.
Yeah, all the pictures that I've ever seen, the drawings and stuff are, I mean, it just chills you to look at. And it left that oily residue, remember? That was a
Yep.
big part of the story. And I don't know, just something just screams malevolence about the whole thing.
Yeah, it wasn't anything friendly, that's for sure. I don't think.
But
Now, are
I
there any
mean, I
other?
had
Go
mhm.
ahead.
I was going to say I had an experience. I've had several experiences in my life. I wouldn't say several. I mean, I've had 3 or 4, I guess, spread out over 50 years that were pretty strange. And I've been on the edge of other people's experiences before, but just this past summer, it was late summer, probably September. I was out in well, we were out past the backyard. I live on a fairly large property. Um, and me and my son, that's just one of the things we like to do in the afternoon, just go for a walk, especially when the heat dies down a little bit. And he's 4. Well, he was just 3.5 then, was 4. And we're walking along and we're on in the back of my property. You've got the yard, and at the end of the yard, I've got a couple motorcycle sheds back there and a couple tool sheds and things like that, little workshops. And then I've got like a graveled off area where I can park some heavy equipment. And then behind that, I've got like a row of trees. Then there's a cornfield on the other side. The row of trees is it's only about 15, 20 feet deep. And then you've got the cornfield. And we were walking, fairly close together. And I always keep him close when we're out back, And so he's 6 feet from me. And he's at that age where he's fascinated by his shadow. It's like he sees his shadow on the garage door with the sun behind him. He'll laugh and point and he can dance like he is, and it copies him, and he's fascinated by it. And it was getting pretty late in the evening. It wasn't dark, but it was it was around dusk, and we were taking one last walk, before we went in for the night. And we're walking, and I'm looking at something off in the distance. I don't know, farm equipment or who knows. I get distracted easy. And he turns to me and he's like, "Look, Daddy, my shadow." And he's laughing and playing. And then I got to thinking, it just hit me all of a sudden as I'm looking the other way that we're back here in the shadow of these trees. He doesn't have a shadow, you know? And I looked to where he was looking because he's, like I said, he's 6 feet from me. And I could see it too. It was about 6 feet from him, so about 12 feet total from me. It was on the other side of me, standing there in the tree line. And it was solid black. It was just pitch black. There was no shine to it. It's like light just escaped into it. But it was the same size and stature as my little boy, just standing there in the woods. And when I looked, I felt like it knew that I was looking at it all of a sudden. And it immediately just slipped behind a tree. And I could hear this thing moving through the trees and the brush. And then I could see, because you could see the trees were so thin, you could see the cornfield behind it. And of course, September, so they're brown and dead by then, but they're still tall, I could see the zigzag pattern as it ran through the cornfield. It just bolted. I mean, it was so fast. But before it bolted, I mean, I just looked at this thing for a good 5 seconds trying to figure out what I was looking at. And he was laughing and pointing at it the whole time. So he saw what I was seeing. And it really unsettling. So I took his hand and said, "I think we should go in right now." And he didn't really get it, but yeah, it gave me a real bad feeling. And like I said, it wasn't broad daylight, but it was pretty close. And I have no idea what I saw.
I love stories like that, especially shadow people. Anything to do with shadows or mirrors. I've heard some just amazing mirror stories. I've only had one shadow person encountered. I haven't written about it yet. I have a book of my personal experiences, My Strange World, and there's 3 key ones in there, or 2 of the key ones in there. The third one is my black-eyed kids encounter, which I think you've heard or heard part of it. That's the most frightened I've ever been. And I don't know that I'll ever write that one down. I don't think I could convey the terror and things that I felt. That's why I always prefer to tell it. But the shadow person encounter that I had, that was when I lived in Oregon. I lived in a little town called St. Helens. And the lady that I rented from, her husband, had been a letter carrier, got killed in a vehicle accident. And one night I was coming out to the bedroom went into the kitchen. And if you walked in, like, it's actually the dining room and the kitchen were together. I walked in right by the dining room table, and off to the right was a laundry room and a mud room. And then off to the left was the rest of the kitchen, the sink island and stuff like that. Well, I see a shadow of a person. I mean, a person-sized shadow, and it was like you were saying, it was black. It didn't have a shine to it. It was blacker than black, and it just kind of walked out of the laundry room behind the table and went through the kitchen and out the wall, which the other side of that wall would have been in the garage. And my little dog was with me, and he saw it, but he didn't seem to scare him. He didn't bark at it, didn't growl or anything. He actually wagged his tail. And I was like, what in the world was that? And I told my landlady, and she said, oh, that's my husband. He comes back and visits sometimes. She said, I've seen that too when I lived there. So there you go. But it was, disconcerting. But again, it didn't seem malevolent. It looked like it was just passing through. And there was also a lot of times there, the TV or the stereo, things like that would come on in the middle of the night and the channels would change and things. Now that could have just been, radio interference from somebody else's remote, but she claimed that was one of the things he liked to do too. He was over all the audio video equipment that they had. That was his domain. And she said he still likes to come in sometimes and turn everything on to make sure it still works. So don't know. I haven't written that one yet. That'll be in the next book. I published Strange Things in the Woods, and that was just a themed book. It was all the stories that I had that I'd heard over basically my entire life about things that happened in the woods. And when that one took off, I'd go on this show or that show. I've been on Coast to Coast and Art Bell's other show, Midnight in the Desert, and I was on with Clyde Lewis, whose radio network, Ground Zero Radio, this show's on. But invariably the hosts, or if they took calls or questions from the audience, people say, well, these are other people's experience. Have you ever had anything strange or a weird encounter? And I'd tell one story or another, and I started thinking, I probably got enough to make a small book, and it ended up being a pretty good-sized book. And I've had enough since I wrote that to fill a second volume, probably. So that's in the works too. But it's amazing, and it seems like your son there. I started seeing and experiencing things when I was 3 or 4 years old, and it never really scared me when I was that small. It just made me curious, like, what was that? That's not supposed to happen. First full body apparition I ever saw was a little kid that ran across the road into our yard and fell down and just ceased to exist. And there was no kid there, no place the kid could have gone to, no hole that he could have fallen into or anything. I even got a shovel and dug. And I think I was 5 at that time. And metaphorically, I think I've never put that shovel down. I'm still digging, trying to find out what all's out there. And the older I get and the more experiences and things I have, it's no longer a quest for answers. I'm just looking for the next set of questions.
Yeah.
If we had the answers, I don't think it's near as much fun as it has been.
No, I've definitely, seen a few things, and that was by far the most recent. Like I've had, not missing time, I guess, but I've had like a time dilation experience. Actually, I've had 2 of those, and just thank God that I had somebody with me, so I didn't start to doubt my sanity.
No, I had one encounter missing time, and I had somebody with me too. The guy that in high school we were out riding BMX bikes together in an undeveloped part of the subdivision. They just had the roads up there. And we were pedaling along, nothing but paved road and wooded lots that they hadn't even sold yet. And I remember some sort of a metallic clank or noise up in the woods to my right. And I kind of turned and looked up there. And then the next thing I know, I'm still on the bike, I'm still pedaling, but I'm going in the opposite direction. And Danny, friend, was right there beside me. We didn't say a word to each other, went on down the road. He went into his driveway. I went a couple of blocks on down, went into mine. I go inside. My parents like, where you been? I said, I was out riding bikes with Danny, and they're like, well, it's getting late. We're getting worried about you. And it was like almost 11 o'clock. And when we were originally up there, it was maybe 8 or 8:30. So I've got 2 or 3 hours there that I cannot account for. And my friend experienced the same thing. I asked him a couple of days later. I said, something weird happened the other night. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I was afraid to say anything. So we both kind of were. And I've had people ask me, said, would you consider hypnotic regression or something? And part of me would like to, but then there's a part of me that doesn't want to know. I mean, if I was abducted and got probed by aliens or something, I don't want to know about. There's a reason I don't remember it.
Yeah. See, mine was the opposite, and my wife and I, we were. There's a couple. They're friends of ours, and I've known the guy for a long time, and because back in the younger days, I used to kind of ride in the club scene a little bit, you know. And he does, and he did. Oh, but they're a couple, and they're friends of ours, and our kids are friends, and. But one evening, just me and my wife had gone over there for dinner, and my mother-in-law was keeping our son. He was 2 at the time. Now, to get to their house is super easy. They live very close to us. Like, you literally come out of our driveway, you turn left, and then you take one turn, and then you go by their house. And their house, you turn into their driveway. It's one turn. You know, it's total of an 8-minute drive. And took the wife's SUV, and now, generally, I don't like to drive cars. I just don't like it. I hate it seems tedious. I would rather sit passenger and look out the window. I have no interest in driving a car. So she does all the driving pretty much more together in the vehicle anyway. And we left their house. It was about 8:30, 9 o'clock, you know, after dinner, because we didn't want, you know, her mom to have to keep the baby that long. And so we leave, just normal. None of us drinking or any kind of substances or anything like that. None of us do anything like that. And we leave. We pull out of the driveway. And being, you know, a good navigator, you know, shotgun guy that I am, wife and I both smoke. As soon as we get on the road, it's just a habit that I light a cigarette, you know. So we pull out as soon as we get going on the straightaway. And it's pretty much a straight shot. There's not a lot of turns. I light a cigarette. I light her a cigarette. I give it to her. I lean down to adjust the radio, and just then, super bright lights come on the rear view, like a car had just run up on us. You could see their headlights like real fast, like out of nowhere. And I guess it's just a biker in me. I don't know. I assume it's a cop. Yeah. Bikers and cops have sort of this hyenas, lions on the Serengeti sort of relationship. We just try to avoid each other, you know.
I can relate. Not to interrupt you there, but back in the day, I rode a Harley too, so I know that feeling exactly.
Yeah. So I ease back and I slide my seatbelt on, you know, and I'm like, okay, what's going to go on here? You know, it's like I figured, because like I said, I'd been in the club scene for a while. My friend still rides with a motorcycle enthusiast club. And I thought, well, they might have been watching his house or something and assumed that we were to no good, you know, even though he's a pretty straight up guy. And, but we're looking at, I'm kind of keeping an eye on him while I'm smoking, thinking anytime we're going to see the blue light, you know, if nothing else, just that, what are you out this hour, you know, or something, where you headed, you know, those questions. But then all of a sudden, boom, they were gone. And I'm thinking, I didn't turn off or anything because you could see the lights. I mean, they were so up on us at one point that you could barely see their lights because they were so close to the rear bumper. And they were just gone, just like flipping a switch. And I'm like, well, that was weird. I don't know where they went, you know. And then I'm talking to my wife about this, and she goes, honey, I don't know where we are. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know where we are? I'm like, because I'd been focused on the headlights in the back, and she's focused on driving, you know, so I wasn't really watching the road either. And and the countryside just looked really strange to me. I'm looking out the window. I'm thinking none of this feels familiar. And at one point, we both saw this. It was like it wasn't quite translucent. It was almost like a greenish white glowing tall figure standing by the side of the road. She swerved over. We both saw it. I'm like, what was that? She goes, I don't know. And we're kind of looking back, and I'm like, I don't have a good feeling about this. And up there, it's like you start to see street lights, and she's like, I'm gonna pull under this street light here. I'm gonna dig out my phone. I'm like, okay. I was like, that sounds like a plan, because that was really weird in itself, because we don't pass any street lights between our house and their house, you know. And we pulled over, and she pulls out her phone and pulls out her GPS. And time frame wise, it was 15 after 9. We're still smoking the same cigarettes that I had lit us when we left. And she GPSs us, and 4 townships over the opposite direction from a friend's house. And we mapped it. We were so far away, and she grew up here. We were so far away, she had to map quest us back to her own home from where we were sitting, because we were so unfamiliar with where we were. And it was going to take us over 2 hours to get back to our house, according to MapQuest. And it did. It took every bit of it. And to this day, I have no idea how we got multiple hours away in just 10 minutes. I have no idea.
Yeah, those fascinate me too. I had a similar occurrence when I lived in Las Vegas. I was a manager at one of the big casinos out there, and I went to visit one of my employees. It was both our days off, and he lived on, it was kind of the south end of the strip, down to, had to go down Tropicana and wind away on that side of the strip, on the Henderson side. And so all I had to do was cross Las Vegas Boulevard on Tropicana, go up about 2 lights and turn by the Orleans and go out that way and get home. And I left his house. I crossed Las Vegas Boulevard, and I drove and I drove and I drove and I drove and I drove. And I'm like, I don't even know where I'm at. And I thought, I'm going to be out by Blue Diamond or something shortly. And I think I'm going to have to turn around. I'm going to have to go back. I didn't recognize anything. And while I'm looking for a place to turn around, there's my turn by the Orleans Casino. Normally, it shouldn't have taken from Las Vegas Boulevard after I crossed it maybe 5 minutes, 10 at the outset to get there. And I'd driven for like a half hour, 40 minutes. And yet there was my turn. I took my turn. I went straight home, and I was just like, what the hell happened there?
Yeah, and you're just like, where did I go?
Yeah, where was I? And the way I've had people describe that, and another time when I lived in Oregon, I'd walked up to the corner. I still smoked at that time. I'd walked up about 2 blocks to the convenience store, got a pack of cigarettes, and I was walking back. And yeah, I was looking at my phone, but I was cognizant of where I was and stuff. And I walked up, I turned down my street and went down the street, and then where my house should have been, it wasn't there. And then I realized I'm on the wrong street. So I went back up to the main street and turned the other direction. And I'd went like 2 or 3 streets past my street and taken a turn. And there was no way that I was that preoccupied with what I was doing. But I was in the wrong place. And the way I've had it described, they said, think of it as like those old paper maps, that if you have point A and point B, you could fold the map and make point A and point B closer to each other. And somehow that happens in real time. The fabric of time and space actually kind of folds and makes point A or point B closer or farther apart. Interesting theory. I don't know how that would work with quantum physics or whatever they're talking about there. But something like that happens. Time distorts, space distorts. It's either shorter or farther, or like you were talking about, you ended up 2 hours away with no idea how you got there or any rhyme or reason that you could have gotten there like that in just a short distance.
Yeah, and like I said, just no time had passed. Like we were still smoking the same cigarette, and used to smoke, it takes about 7 minutes to smoke a cigarette. So
Yeah, yep,
you
that's
can
right.
almost set your clock by about 7 minutes, how long it takes to smoke a cigarette. So yeah, I have no idea what happened there. And like I said, we saw that weird figure on the side of the road. And to this day, my wife will acknowledge that it happened because she had to make the uncomfortable call to her mom saying, "Hey, we're going to be 2.5 hours late because we're over here in blanky blank, and I don't know how we got here."
Amazing.
And it shook her up pretty bad. She won't really talk about it, which bugs me because I'd like to get more of her perspective on it, but it weirded her out so bad that she said she gets really bad anxiety when she thinks about it.
Yeah,
So
and
she
I can
doesn't.
understand that. And you're exactly right about the cigarette timer thing. Back in the early 80s, I did stand-up comedy, and that was how I timed my act. I would light a cigarette. I wouldn't really puff on it, but it'd take it about 10 minutes to burn down, and then I knew, I had to either wrap it up or get off the stage or whatever because of where the cigarette was at. But that is a good indicator, and if you're still smoking the same cigarette, there's no way that cigarette burned for 2 hours.
No, no, no. If you're smoking them about 7, if you let them sit about 10, that's just the way it goes. So that was that was really, really bizarre. And like I said, I don't know if the figure on the side of the road had anything to do with it. If that was something weird that's way out there, because neither one of us were familiar with our surroundings. Neither one of us had ever been to this town before that we found ourselves on the outskirts of. So, maybe it's something out there. I don't know. And it was a long evening getting home. Just weird, uncomfortable silence with her not wanting to talk about it. And
But then you've got an amazing story to tell, so it's all
yeah,
worth it in the end.
I mean, there's the world's a weird place, and
It really is. There's just all kinds of things out there that it's thankfully it's just occasional, but things that just don't make any sense. There's no rhyme or reason, and just pure anomalous stuff. And my brother, older brother, he's passed on now. He was a Pentecostal minister, and I asked him about stuff like that one time, and the clearest explanation I've ever heard of the supernatural from that perspective was he said that what we consider the natural was spoken forth out of the supernatural. He said, so therefore, there's going to be things that happen that we can't apply man's laws to, that we can't measure, that we can't quantify. It just is. It's anomalous. And then even my father, he was a scientist out at Oak Ridge National Laboratory there in East Tennessee, and he would talk about that sometimes there was things that happened in controlled conditions in a laboratory that would never happen again. They couldn't get it to happen again. They didn't know how or why it happened. It wasn't supposed to happen, yet it did maybe one time. So there are all kinds of things out there that can't be explained.
well, there was that experiment, and they could repeat it, but they don't understand it. Where they had the light particles and they had the slots. Remember that?
Uh-huh. I've read
And
about it.
and it would make a wave while they were watching it. As soon as they stopped, it acted like particles. It's like the particles themselves knew they were being observed. And to this day, they don't understand why those light particles acted like that. They were firing photons through these slots with a surface on the other side that would record where the photons hit. And it behaved like it should while they were watching it. But when they stopped, it would act like a wave almost, filling in the gaps around the slots. It's like it knew it was being monitored.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah, like it was cognizant. It knew, hey, they're watching. We did what we're supposed to. But when the cat's away, the mice will play type thing. Hey, they're not looking. Let's go wild.
And Einstein, his theories allowed for things like time dilation and even time travel, because with energy is tied to gravity and electromagnetism and things like that. And the Earth is a big ball of electromagnetism. I mean, there's surges in it, and there's an ebb and flow to it. I mean, there's a possibility that you could get in a right spot that could cause a time dilation event. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
It's like in a
And,
black hole. You get to the event horizon, time essentially stopped for you. You know?
yeah. And I believe that theory that time isn't necessary laterally. It's, there are different streams of time. Some things go on. That's the explanation that I've heard for the Mandela effect, that there's different timelines. And sometimes I've heard it compared to like two pieces of silk, and they come close enough together and maybe actually touch, and you can see through both of them at the same time. But then when they part, one time stream goes one way, one goes the other. Fascinating stuff. That's just, I was chronic insomniac most of my life, and that's the kind of thoughts that would roll around in my head at night when I was supposed to be sleeping, just laying there.
And there's just all kinds of, I don't know. I love a good time slip story. It's never happened to me where people get a glimpse of the past, and then they turn a corner and everything's normal again and things like that. I think I've only ever had one or two of those stories submitted. They're super rare, but I find them fascinating when they do come up.
Yeah, on the other channel that I used to be on, I had a lady submit one over there that was like that. There was some people that lived in her neighborhood that had a Coke machine on their front porch. It was a way to earn a little extra money. Plus, it was kind of a community gathering place. People would show up and get a Coke out of their machine and stand around on their porch and talk. She's on her way there to get a soda, and she passes by a man that's standing in front of a vacant lot. And she's thinking, why have I never seen this vacant lot before? She was just a kid. I'll have to tell the other kids about this. This is a perfect place to play ball. And so the man kind of looks down at her and smiles and said, "How are you today?" And just as he said that, he was gone. The vacant lot was no longer vacant. And she's like, "I knew there wasn't a vacant lot there. I've walked down to that Coke machine 100 times, and there's never been a vacant lot there." And she said, "I wonder if somewhere, but in some timescape, there was a man standing there and he saw a little girl walk by that just winked out." So interesting to think about. But that's, to me, that's a time slip, a vacant lot that wasn't there and a gentleman that just disappeared. I love stuff like that. I love those kind of stories, especially first person.
Oh, I do too. And there was, I guess I'm getting to that age where it's difficult for me to remember certain things. But there was a story of a pilot who was flying somewhere in England, and he flew over an airfield, and it was an airfield that was supposed to have been abandoned for the war, And he talked about there being, planes there, and they were yellow, and they could see people in flight suits, and it was a full field, And then he circled back around, and gone. And this is right around World War II. But then they were looking back at his notes years later, and they actually ended up redeveloping that airfield, and it was a private company, and their planes were yellow. It's like he saw into the future for a moment, and he couldn't explain it at the time, but he made the report because they were always on the lookout for German outposts and things like that. And it was in his report, and then 50 years later, it came to pass.
Yeah, I've heard that story. I think it was pre-war. It's like 1939 or something. And
something like that. It was right around.
And then he talked about it. And then later on, I think he actually flew over it again and saw it, how it was that he saw it the other time that he flew over it when it wasn't supposed to look that way. So definitely some kind of a time slip there.
Oh, so what do you think about this Mandela effect? What's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's?
I think there's something to it. I don't think that many people misremember things that bad, because I've had people argue with me stuff that I remember, know exactly how it was, and they're like, "No, it was never like that." And Jif peanut butter, I've had people try to say, "No, it used to be Jiffy." Well, in my timeline, it was always Jif. Choosy mothers choose Jif. I can still remember the commercials.
Yeah, I remember that.
But and with Nelson Mandela himself, I remember the first time he died, and then he died again. And there's been a few people like that. Jim Neighbors has died at least twice. He died once years and years ago, and I remember him talking about that, how he always sang the Indiana My Home song at the Indianapolis 500, and this, that, and the other. And then he died again, and they talked about the same thing again, but there was no record anywhere of him having died previously, of course. And then one of the most amazing to me is the character Jaws from the James Bond movies. They even made a commercial about the girl with the braces. But then now in that James Bond movie, she doesn't have braces anymore. And that whole scene, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or not, but it
I know
makes
exactly what you're talking about.
sense.
Yes, the girl with the pigtails, and she had these metal braces, and they turn and smile at the camera at the end of the movie when he kind of goes away or goes his own way, and he just decides he's going to be happy with her. And well, see, that was the whole draw of that scene, was they both had the metal mouth, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for it not to be there.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
So, I mean, I remember that scene very clearly. That was one of my favorite movies. I owned it on VHS. You know, I was a James Bond VHS collector at some point, you know, and I used to love those movies. And I just don't. I know for a fact I had seen that movie probably 36 times, and she always had braces.
That scene used to be there, I swear. And then another one, there's a Bible verse about the lion lying down with the lamb. That doesn't exist anymore. It's apparently a wolf instead of a lion. But I've read that before. I thought I had. I mean, how could I misremember something like that?
Yeah, that was always a lion.
When I heard
the wolf thing.
Yeah, that makes no sense. I used to go to a Christian bookstore that was called The Lion and the Lamb. And I'm like, you know, why would they call it that if that didn't even exist?
No, and it was just that one always bothered me because my family were really into church, and I was always fascinated by theology in general when I was younger, and not because I wanted to be a pastor or anything like that, just because I just found it really interesting, you know? And so I had read the Bible many, many times. I could quote scripture just because, I mean, it was really interesting because it was the first, I'm not going to say mythological, but it had that supernatural plus historical tie-in, you know, that was fascinating, you know, it was. And so I read a lot of it, and it was never a wolf. I don't remember a wolf being mentioned anywhere in the Bible.
I don't either.
There was one line about a wolf in sheep's clothes, and that the saying came from. It was paraphrased, of course, but there was something alluding to that. It had to do with the shepherd, you know, being wary of the wolf. But other than that, I don't ever remember a wolf being mentioned in the scripture at all. So when it was not a lion and the lamb, it was a wolf and the lamb. It threw me. It really did.
And again, I don't know how that came about, but something changed somewhere. Now, there's one theory I've heard that the world really did end in 2012 for some people, and then for everybody else, it continued on, and that's why things are different. That we're on a totally different timeline now.
I've heard the theory that the Mandela Effect things started creeping up when they first fired up the CERN particle accelerator. That I've heard people say that
same theory.
That it somehow caused certain realities to split off and certain things to cross over, that it caused rifts in time space. I've heard that theory before. And the time frame kind of lines up to that's when you first started hearing about Mandela effects. Because I'm 50, and the Mandela effect thing is easily within the last 10, 15 years. Before that, there was never any mention of any false memories at all. Nobody had false memories of anything 15 years ago.
Yeah, I just turned 60 on Halloween, so I'm just ahead of you a little bit. But yeah, I remember things. I'm not into my dotage enough yet that I'm forgetting things. It's like earlier, a couple of weeks ago on Thanksgiving, I was talking about the cornucopia, and I said something about it being on the Fruit of the Loom logo. Well, apparently it never was. It's just the fruit on the label now for Fruit of the Loom underwear. But I distinctly remembering there being a cornucopia there at one time.
I do too. I do too.
That's,
I remember there
that's
being
how I
a
knew what a
commercial.
cornucopia was. Yeah.
And I've got a friend named Yates, and Yates is one of those weird phenoms that it's not a photographic memory, it's called an endemic memory, but it's similar to a photographic memory. Like, he got studied for it because his memory is so precise. Like, even now, Yates could sit down and write out word for word everything that was on his 5th grade, page 27 geography book, you
Mhm.
know? And he swears up and down there was always been a cornucopia with Fruit of the Loom. And he remembers everything. And he can't help but remember things. It keeps him up at night. And he would bet on his mama's life that there was a cornucopia. I trust him.
No explanation.
Nope. None. That's probably one of those concerning things, supernatural, that's going on right now, is the whole Mandela effect. And it seems like every time you turn around, there's another one. And
But
apparently there's one about Pokemon, but I never got into Pokemon. I don't
yeah,
know.
it was
I don't know
Pikachu's
anything about
tail,
that.
whether it had a stripe on it or not. I was way beyond my time, but I remember it differently than it supposedly is. So.
Yeah, I didn't know enough about that one to have an opinion. So, but the rest of them, like Nelson Mandela, the one that started it all, and that Shazam movie, um, with Sinbad, I remember that. But apparently it never happened.
Yeah, supposedly that never happened, but I worked in a video store at one time, and we had copies of it, but now it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I remember it just because I was still fairly young, and we used to go to there was 2 video stores in town. There was a Hollywood Video, and there was a Blockbuster Video. And I was always been a movie buff, and I used to go in there and browse around. I remember there being a display of it, and that was the first thing I remember seeing Sinbad in. I didn't know who Sinbad was. So, and then to find out that movie never existed at all was kind of shocking. So, and I think my sister had a copy of it, to be honest with you, but because that was about her age range. She's younger than me, so it seems like that.
And
Seems like
the
she had
same
that
with
at the
the
house.
Berenstain and the Berenstain bears. There's I've known people that claim to have a copy of it one way, and then they dug it out of the parents' attic, and it's a way other than they remember it.
Yeah, and it's changed. That's the thing. It's like all evidence of it is just, you know, has changed with it.
But you're right. I think it has something to do with CERN, because about the time they fired that up, that was when you start hearing these stories. Another that blows my mind, Curious George never had a tail. Yes, he did. I remember in the books him hanging from a tree from it and doing stuff. Now he doesn't have a tail.
Yeah, there's that one cover. I remember it. He's hanging from a tree. He's got that weird pointed hat with the brim hanging in his hand, and he's hanging by his tail, and that yellow hat that he wore. And I remember that book. I had that book as a child, you know. But apparently he never had a tail. And sure enough, on Tubi, the streaming service or whatever, they have old Curious George cartoons, and he doesn't have a tail anymore. I don't know.
You're right, though. It is a strange world out there in a lot of different ways.
I just I would, part of me would love to know the answers, and then part of me enjoys the mystery. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what I said earlier. If we had all the answers, the journey wouldn't be half as much fun as it is, and it has been.
And it just makes you wonder what are we going to see tomorrow?
I don't know, but I can't wait. And I'm here in New England. I've only been here since July, and there's so much history here and so many places that I want to explore and look at, and just it's amazing. I've always felt a draw to here, even as a child, and now here I am, and I just love it. There's so much here to see and do. And I've lived all over the country. I've lived on both coasts. I've lived in Florida, lived in Las Vegas, Oregon, Washington State, New Mexico, and now here I am in New England, and love it. It's my new playground.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. I've been through there a couple of times. I live outside Gettysburg now, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, now that's a
Um,
place I need to go. I've been invited several times when they have the ghost thing, the Boo Bash or whatever it is in Gettysburg. Cisco Murdoch, that does Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal podcast on YouTube. She goes often, and she and I wrote a book together, and she's begged me to come to Gettysburg. So maybe this time I'm not that far away from it like I was. So maybe the next time they have something, I'll get to go.
yeah, let me know. I'll meet you up there. Like I said,
Yeah,
it's only about 10 minutes from my house.
that'd be great. But
And
I've
Cisco
heard
seems like she'd be a lot of fun.
yeah, I think so. Now she may be moving closer to Gettysburg. I think she's getting ready to vacate New Jersey. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about that yet or not, but she may be a near neighbor to you soon.
It's nice. I've only lived up here for about 5 or 6 years now. Originally from the mountains of North Carolina,
Oh
up
yeah,
around North Wilkesboro area. Yeah, I grew up down there, and it's some weird stuff down there too, out in the mountains and stuff.
yeah. I grew up in East Tennessee and went to the Smokies often. So that part of East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, I'm very familiar with it.
And I tell you what, my childhood friend, he had an experience in the woods when we were, I guess we were about seven, I guess, around 7 or 8 years old. And I never did get the details of it, but he was my best friend, and really didn't have a choice because where my parents live, you can't even see another house from their house. They have something. They sit on about 1,700 acres of land, and a lot of it's farmland, but a lot of it's still wooded and undeveloped. And then his family was the closest family that lived to ours. Their property bordered ours, and his dad was a farmer. And so, and we were still, our houses are still a mile from each other, but he was the closest kid around. And we got along famously. We were best friends. And between the two of us, he was always the outgoing one, you know. And I used to go to his house in the morning because that was as far as the bus would go. It wouldn't come all the way up to my house. And so my parents would drop me off at his house early in the morning, and I'd hang out with Steven for breakfast, and we'd get on the bus together during elementary school. And I went over there one day, and Steven didn't come down, and his mom was in the kitchen. I said, "Well, where's Steven?" And she's like, "Well, he's not feeling good today." And I'm like, okay. And then his dad told me, he's like, I didn't see Steven for days. And his dad said, well, Steven saw something in the woods, and he's not really okay about it. And I kid you not, they had to pull him out of school. My buddy did not utter a word to anyone, as far as I know, for like 3 years. It scared the speech out of
Wow, now
him. And
that's hardcore. Do you have any idea what he saw?
I eventually got him to open up about it as adults. And he still was super vague, and you could tell it bothered him. All he would say was, "It shimmered, and it killed my dog." And yeah, his dog got gone right around that time. I didn't mention it because I was so focused on Steven, but he had a dog named Bear that I never saw again. And eventually he said he wouldn't go into detail about what it was, but he said it was big and it shimmered, and he said it killed his dog right in front of him.
Almost sounds like what they call the Glimmer Man or the predator creature. There's a lot of encounters with that. I had an experience with something like that in downtown Portland, Oregon, real late one night at a bus stop. It was a humanoid shape, but a very small statured human, and I thought it was like heat or steam or something rising out of a street vent. And I walked up to where I could see it better, and there was no vent there, and it just kind of hunkered down behind a garbage can. I don't know what that was, but I got out of there. I was waiting on the last train out of there, the commuter train, the Orange Line. I'd been to something at Powell's Books, a book signing or an author reading or something, and I was hanging around down there. I was the only one at that train stop, and that scared the life out of me. And I hustled on up the block, or about 6 blocks, to the next train station, and thankfully there were people around there. But I've heard some strange encounters. That Bruce Maccabee, UFO researcher, his wife Jan was deer hunting in a tree stand and saw something like that in the next tree over. She said it looked like she was looking through cellophane or plastic wrap or something, but it was a vaguely humanoid shape.
Yeah, whatever it was, it changed him for life. He became very withdrawn, super, super shy after that. And like I said, he was always the outgoing one between the two of us. And he withdrew from public school completely. He had to be homeschooled. He eventually returned to high school for the last year, I think, just so he could graduate with people he knew and have some sort of normal adjustment. But no, he was never the same, whatever he saw. And like I said, I wish he would have told me exactly what happened, but he would say so little about it. You could tell it bothered him to the point where he would even tell me really what happened. So I don't know.
That's amazing. Those life-changing encounters, experiences like that. I've never had one that affected me to that degree, but wow, that's really something.
So I believe him, because I don't think, for whatever he saw, and it's not like he could have run into something out there that he just didn't know what it was, because I mean, we were little farm boys. We had been running around this property all over the woods and stuff, pretty much unsupervised our whole lives. You know, we'd go out in the morning and come back at dark, and it was just, most of it's wooded, and we would just be out and about. So, I mean, we were real familiar with, wildlife and everything else that you would normally come across. We did have one weird experience together before that happened. There was one area that both of our parents had told us not to go into this area, that it was dangerous. There was holes. It was like a rocky area. It was a real overgrown, that we could fall in a hole and get lost, stay out of there. And so we avoided it. And it was close to dusk one night. And the rule was we always had to be home by dark. They didn't want us to be out past dark because we were little, And we were just getting ready to head back. And we were talking about whether we were going to split up or if we were both going to go to his house and have dinner. Because that counted as being home if I went to his house, because our parents knew each other real well. And we were just about ready to break off and walk back toward home. We had been playing Army, which is basically like tag, sort of, where we hide and sneak up on each other. And so we were getting to head back, and we heard his dad calling him. Steve, come here. Come see what I see. Come see what I found or something. And we could hear him just clear as day. And it was coming from this area that we're not supposed to go to. And I just remember I got a real bad feeling. Because one, what would Jack be doing way out, here? Because we knew that we were a good 40, 45 minutes if we hustled back to the house. We were way out there, And so we didn't really know. And we didn't call back, because we didn't know what to think. And because we had been told so much not to go over there. We were scared to go over there, especially with the sun getting low and having to be back. So finally, I just whispered, I said, Steve, let's just head back to the house. And we'll just say we didn't hear him. If he gets mad that, we'll say, oh, we didn't hear you, Well, we hustled back to the house, and we were there, and his dad wasn't there. But then his dad come in just back from, they had some chicken houses. So he's like, I'm just coming in from the chicken house, which is on the other side of the property. So there's no way he could have been out there in that holler, So that was weird, and we never really spoke about it much. But I remembered that when Steve had his encounter or whatever that messed him up so bad. I thought about that earlier. I never brought it up.
Yeah, and I've heard stories like that. There are things out there that will mimic known voices known to the person hearing them. In fact, I had somebody send me a story the other day for Midnight Mailbox where they were out in the woods and they started hearing not just one voice, but several voices that they recognized, like their aunt and a kid that they knew and their best friend. And I've heard other cases where people maybe were out in the woods and heard a familiar voice coming out of a cave. And that'd be a big nope for me, especially if it's somebody that's either passed on or somebody that's halfway across the country and I hear their voice coming out of a cave. No, sir, I'm not going to go check it out.
No, no, it was really creepy, and we never really talked about it, and after, and it wasn't long after this, probably a year or so before, whatever happened to him out in the woods, and then I sort of avoided the subject of anything strange or supernatural around him. I just didn't bring it up, so 'cause I didn't want to upset him further.
Yeah, that's something else. If it, like you said, it shocked the speech out of him. That's wow.
Yeah, it was really strange, and it was rough, and we were best friends, so I still went over there and hung out with him every day, but he just really wouldn't talk, and it was a long time before he would even say a word here or there to me. I mean, like a year or two, and he still wouldn't really talk. He would just say a word here or there, just enough to communicate. And it
Fascinating.
come to a
I'd love to
stranger.
hear his entire story if he ever gets to the point where he can tell it, but that's probably not going to happen, sadly.
No, I don't. He he had a really rough time with it. He's had a rough time since. He's further sort of become a recluse since then, and like
Yeah,
I
and for
don't.
something to fundamentally change your personality like that, that's just it just it boggles the mind. I can't imagine, what would scare me that bad. And I've had some frightening encounters, but nothing so bad that it made me, not want to talk or to withdraw from other people or the change, just my very nature.
Yeah, he became, um, and I love the guy. He's a good-hearted guy, and he just to this day he's almost a complete recluse. He, no social medias, no, you know, intermittently has a phone. Like when I go to visit my parents, like I'll journey up to his cabin to see him, and even then, he may or may not come to the door. Like he's completely kind of withdrew from society. And I mean, he's still alive and everything, but he just doesn't. He just he definitely he makes an effort to not interact anymore. You know.
Would love to know more of the circumstances. If it was whatever it was, told him, don't talk to people, don't be friendly with people, don't associate with people, or if it's just shattered his psyche to the point that that's how he deals with it is just to withdraw further and further into himself.
Yeah, and his parents won't really tell me more about what he saw either, and I think they know more than I do, which is weird because his mom used to tell me stories that there used to be up on the dirt roads up there. There's a lot of dirt roads up in that area, just south of Wilkesboro. There's an area called Vashti that's really spooky and lots of dirt roads. And they lived in this old farmhouse, her and her family, when she was little. And they would talk about these orbs of light that would just float up and down the road, and they called them ghost lights. And they would sort of revolve a little bit, and they'd see them just float up and down the road. And they were telling me one night, and um, his sister, or her sister, her mom's sister, actually was sitting there, and they both recalled the story when they were all sitting in the house, and one of these ghost lights floated right up to their house through the screen door and floated right through the house in front of everybody. early afternoon, there's maybe 10 people in the house that saw it just go floating right by, not even 4 or 5 feet from them, out the back door, and just kept going. No sound, no heat, just a glowing ball of light, you know.
Again, fascinating. Now, have you ever been over to Brown Mountain, North Carolina, and seen those lights over there?
I have, yes, yes. Those
I've
are
been
so
there a few times.
predictable.
Yeah, I used to live in a little town called Mountain City, Tennessee, way up in the northeastern tip, and just a little way down the road from Boone, North Carolina. And I would make that trip over to Wiseman Gorge and watch those lights. That's just one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. The first time I saw them, it looked like somebody with almost like a fluorescent lantern running through the woods over there on the other side of the gorge. And I thought, that's just, somebody messing around. And I ended up spending the night up there out in the woods. And the next morning when I woke up and I could actually see over there, those are like sheer cliff faces over there. There's some trees growing out of it, but there's no way you could even walk through there, let alone run with a lantern. But those are, I don't know, there's something otherworldly, I think. There have been seismologists and people like that, I think from North Carolina State or one of the universities over there studied those, and their findings were inconclusive. And other people try to say, oh, it's lights of cars or a train, but they saw those lights in there before there were ever cars or a train or anything back in that area.
Yeah,
So,
the people have been seeing them since the 1800s, and they're so regular. Like you'll see them 9 times out of 10 going up there. I mean, it's rare you won't see them. And for something to be that frequent and so regular and still not have an explanation after all these years is just baffling to me.
Heard piezoelectricity, tectonic plates shifting, and it causes, I don't know. It looks like somebody with a lantern to me, or lanterns, some of it. And then there's ones that fly over and they change colors. And I've seen them, a big one split into 3 or 4 smaller ones and then joined back together. It's, again, fascinating. I went up there maybe half a dozen times, and I saw them every time I was there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you had to wait until real late at night, but I saw them every time. It seemed like if it was raining or a little misty that they were out earlier.
Yeah, every time I've been up there probably 5 or 6 times, and I've seen them every single time. So, and it's just, and I don't know, it's strange to me that there could be something, supernatural or unexplained that you can just go see whenever you want. That it's going to happen.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
the thing.
surprised the
It's so
enterprising
regular.
individual hasn't put up a viewing stand or something up there and then charge people to see it. But it's something to see, and I would recommend it to anybody listening. If you're anywhere near Brown Mountain, North Carolina, go and have a look. Now, there's one place, just a wide spot on the side of the road where there's a viewing area. But if you go on the other side of the gorge, and it takes some getting to, it was like a gravel road. You had to go way back in there. But they had, I think it's a state forest or some kind of park back in there. They had an outhouse and everything, so a little bit of convenience, but had to work to get to it. But that's the best place to see them from, in my experience.
It's been a long time since I've been there. It's been 15 or 20 years probably. But yeah, we used to go up there. I've been fascinated by the paranormal and stuff pretty much ever since my friend saw whatever he saw. And that really.
Yeah, it started with me when I'd already had some experiences. Saw they looked like Christmas lights, but they were flying around the house. I was probably about 3 when I saw that. I was trying to catch them. And my dad's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to get those Christmas lights, Daddy." But it was in the summertime. There weren't any Christmas lights. That was the first thing that I really remember. But when I saw the apparition of a little boy run across the road, and then like little kids, and you as a parent probably know what I'm talking about, they've just barely mastered the art of walking, and they find out that they can run, but they don't really know how to stop, and they'll just fall down. That's what this toddler did, but when he hit the ground, he was just gone. I still see him, the outfit he had on and everything. No idea what that was. Now, grandmother, my maternal grandmother. She was a self-prescribed gypsy witch. I don't know where she gets the gypsy part because she was born in the Cades Cove area of the Smokies. But later in life, I asked her about that, and her explanation was kind of cryptic, but it's like, well, there's some things you're meant to see. There's some things that other people, it's something for them, and you can see it too. And then there's other things you don't know why you see it, if ever, maybe not even in retrospect. It just is. And that was all I could get out of her about it. But again, that's what started me on my journey. And it didn't scare me, didn't frighten me, but I was just like, what was that? You know, little kids don't run across the road and fall down and disappear. Even at 5 years old, I knew that. And just started me on a quest. And as Charles Fort wrote, one measures a circle beginning anywhere. You're always going to come right back around to the same thing. And that's where I'm at and where I've been and where I'll always be, I think. Soraya Askath, Where'd the Road Go? I was on with him one time, and he described the paranormal as like a big jigsaw puzzle, but you don't have the box lid, so you don't know what picture you're trying to make out of the puzzle. And then the farther you get into it, you realize that some joker has mixed together 7 or 8 puzzles. So there are pieces that don't fit anywhere in the puzzle you're trying to put together. And I thought that was a good analogy.
You know, your grandmother sounds like one of those old mountain witches, one of those Appalachian mountain witches.
Granny witch is the real term for it. Like I said, I don't know where the gypsy came from, but
that's what they call them up there. They attach the gypsy to it because my great grandmother apparently had rumors about her. I never met her, and I didn't hear about it until I was dating when I was a kid. And I remember going to this girl's house, and her grandmother wouldn't let me up on her porch because she said that I was related to that witchy woman. And I went and asked my parents what they were talking about, and they told me that Versi was people thought she was a witch because she would buy warts. Did you ever heard that? Would they buy warts?
Yeah.
Or she would give you just take a penny or something, and then your warts would be gone the next day. And apparently she taught my grandfather, her son, to blow fire.
Yeah,
which
I heard her talk about that. I never did see that now. But the warts, she took a wart off my thumb one time with a piece of gravel, and she rubbed it on the wart and told me where to take it and put it. And she said, the next person that walks over where you put that gravel, they'll get your wart. And within a day or two, the wart was gone. So whatever she did, it worked. But she didn't cast spells as far as I know, but she told fortunes. She read tea leaves and coffee grounds, animal entrails. She did a little bit of palmistry, and she practiced phrenology, which is kind of a lost art now, but that was where they could tell things about you by the bumps on your skull. And that was kind of a turn of the last century type thing. I've seen those old ceramic heads with the areas marked off on them, but she was a fascinating lady. I was scared of her when she was little. When I was little, she looked like a witch, like the Hansel and Gretel type witch. And I was scared to death of her. And I've had people come to me later in their life and say, your grandma knew things that she didn't have any way of knowing. I'm like, you're telling me. She would pop out with things like that sometimes, that things about me that she had no way, something I'd seen or felt or heard. And she wasn't anywhere around, but she knew about it. And she passed away when I was 13 years old, but I wish I'd had another 13 with her because I could have learned a lot from her, I think. Yeah,
that's a whole lore up there in the mountains with those old ways like that. And stuff like blowing fire. And I've heard of some of those mountain people could like stop bleeding and
I was just thinking of that. There's a Bible verse that's supposed to staunch blood, but you have to walk, I think it's north when you read it. And there was a whole order to it that you had to do it in. But I've seen her do that before. And again, no explanation for she's more of a kitchen witch. The bowl that she used for scrying on Saturday night might have mashed taters in it on Sunday morning on the dinner table. But Granny Witch or a Kitchen Witch is what they call her these days. But she called herself a Gypsy Witch, and that was to differentiate because there were other types of witches up there in that area that she didn't like and didn't want to be a part of. She would put garlic, cloves of garlic in the keyholes. The house that she lived in, this big old Victorian farmhouse, had this old keyholes in it that took like a skeleton key. And at night, she would poke cloves of garlic in there and say that was to keep witches from getting in the house. And it'd be like, but aren't you a witch? And she's like, those are different witches, and had a lot of stories about haints and boogers and things like. She used to say, "There's a haint, never holler." That was she'd moved out of that area, of course, to Cates Cove and stuff back when she was small. But she'd say it's pretty up there in the mountains. She said, but don't let it catch you out after dark because there's a haint, never holler. And I mean, she was right. There's smoky, especially Cates Cove. I'd say Cates Cove and probably the North Shore of Fontana Lake are the two most paranormally active areas in the Smokies. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a culture up there, and there's not a lot really talked about it, but it's a deep, rich, like folklore culture with the dowsing rods and all the stuff, and it's a whole
my dad
system
could
of
do that.
beliefs up there.
He was what they called a water witch. He could take a piece of willow, a forked willow branch, and he could find not only water but pipes and things that were underground. He showed me how to do it, and I tried every way in the world to keep the end of that stick from pointing down. I mean, pulling back as hard as I could, and it would still dip down to the point it was a fresh willow branch, and it stripped the bark off in my hands. It was trying to pull down so hard. Can't explain it, but it works. But he could do the same thing with a couple of bent pieces of coat hanger. It didn't have to be anything special. It was just, whatever he had. But fascinating. Now, there's another guy. I've had him on the show before, Jared King. He has a YouTube channel called Jared King TV. And that's pretty much all he talks about is Appalachian haints, boogers, and witches. And he's got some great stuff over there. If you're into that sort of folklore and the granny witches and stuff, give his channel a listen. I think you'll be surprised pleasantly by all the stuff he talks about over there and all the tales and stuff.
Yeah, I would like to. I'd probably check him out because that was something I always found fascinating. Because my parents, my immediate parents, were very religious, very Southern Baptist, and so they kind of frowned on all that stuff, and so they kind of sort of tried to keep it away from me, I guess, growing up, and my grandfather passed away when I was 16. He, of course, like he could blow fire. She had taught him how to blow fire, and I had a burn from a motorcycle. I used to ride dirt bikes as a kid, and I got pinned and it had pulled up my pants and it had burned my calf muscle pretty bad. It blistered immediately, and his house was close by, and he did the fire blowing thing on it, which he just kind of cupped his hands and he just kind of blew on my calf, and he said some kind of words in a whisper. I don't know what he said. And it healed it within the pain went away immediately, like immediately. And then the next day, it was like it had never happened. So I mean, there's stuff to it, and I don't understand how it works.
Too, I don't know, mind over matter, or if it is some kind of witchery or what. And I know somebody had told me a story about it was from that area. Their cow had gone dry, and the man, the husband, was out in the woods hunting, and he saw a woman that had built a cow. An effigy of a cow out of sticks, and she was milking this effigy of a cow, and it was actually giving milk. And he fired the shotgun. He didn't shoot at her, but shot over her head, and she ran off. And he went over there and tore that wooden cow apart, stick cow apart, and then their cow started giving milk again. And they said that that's what happened, that she had bewitched their cow, and that's why it wasn't giving milk. There's all kinds of fascinating stories like that in the Southern Appalachians.
Man, there's an area up there, not too far from where I grew up, and I had never heard of this, and I haven't heard of it since. And I used to date this girl that lived over there, and I talked to her. Well, I brought it up to her because I had been one night. I'd been at this gas station, the only gas station that was open 24 hours around this little town, and so that's where I had to go. And I was there, and this car came peeling, this beat up car, and dude jumps out, runs in. The other guy gets out frantically, tries to start pumping gas. The other guy's paying for it, and I was just like, I could tell they were in distress, you know. So I walked over and I'm like, "Are you guys all right?" You know. He said, and these guys were, and they might have been drinking a little bit, you know. And there was three of them, and you know they were just dumb teenagers, and they were like, he goes, we were driving, and we were in this area, and a big dog went walking across the road, and he's like, and Jimmy was like, I think it'd be fun to hit it, you know, and because they're stupid rednecks, you know, and apparently they hit this thing, and they swore that it rolled, got up on two legs, and started chasing their car, and it was tearing at the back of the car, and their plan was just to get gas and just keep driving until the sun came up. They were certain that whatever they hit was after them. And I rolled around the back of their car, and it was an old rusted car. It was a beat up car, you know. But there were fresh metal gash marks in the rust on the back of this car. And that kind of stuck with me, you know. So I talked to this girl, and she was like, "Well, I've seen that thing." And I was like, "Really?" She said, "Yeah." She said, this whole, she lived on a place that was called Devil Track Road, because apparently they had been seeing this thing for so many years. And there was an old dirt road area called Old Devil Track Road. And they even named the road that because they were building it. They would find all these weird tracks in the area. And she said the story goes that her grandmother told her that there were three witches. They were sisters. They called them the Blankenship sisters. And apparently they thought other witches were siphoning their power or something. They were like a group of witches. And so they summoned this demon that was supposed to eat witches. They wanted to get rid of their competition. But apparently something went wrong, and the Blankenship sisters, according to the story, disappeared. And so this thing is still just roaming the area. And she said she's seen it several times. She said it's just tall. It sounded like a Sasquatch, what she sounded like. She said it had blondish hair, but it could look like a big shaggy dog, or it could stand up and walk like a human. And she called it an Evok, and I had never heard that term before or since. So, but I would love to know
Yeah,
more about
I'm
it.
not familiar with that either, but yeah, that sounds interesting. And then I've noticed that Lauren Coleman wrote about it back in the 80s, and then Charles Ford, even prior to that, places with devil names. You know, that there's a lot of times there will be some sort of anomalous activity there. And there's a couple different theories on that. It's so-called because, you know, the settlers or the Native Americans even experienced things there, and they gave it the devil name, or just giving it a devil name attracts stuff there. So I could see it going either way, but it's interesting to think about. You think about a lot of missing person cases that I cover. It will be around or in or near someplace that has devil or Diablo or some variant like that in the name.
And you can find it on a map. It's in the Taylorsville area over in the Ellendale community, because she lived in Taylorsville, and it was south of Boone. You know, it was about 45 minutes from where I grew up, and you could look on the map and you could find Devil Track Road, Devil Track Circle, and Old Devil Track Road. It's still called that right on the map. But I would love to know more about that area, and you know, I'm hoping someday I'll get some submissions from that area that'll line up with it. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, have you ever been over close to, I think it's close to Siler City, the Devil's Tramping Ground? Have you ever seen that?
I've never seen it. No, I've always wanted to. We're supposed to be the big circle that
Yeah,
you
it's
put something in it.
circle,
It's
about
outside the
40,
circle. the
50
next
feet
day.
in diameter, so that there's supposedly the ground there is absolutely sterile. Nothing grows there. Nothing will ever grow there. And last time I was up there was like beer cans and trash and stuff in it. But there was a story that some Boy Scouts tried to camp in it and drove them out of their minds. I don't know, but it's got a creepy feel to it.
I'd like to see it sometime. That's one of my dreams. If my YouTube channel ever gets large enough, and because I only invest in it what I make up out of it, I like to make a couple of motorcycle road trips where I visit some of
Yeah.
these haunted places, the
That'd
GoPro,
be
and
cool. Make videos about it. Yeah. I know I
include the
think it's
ride.
on private property, but the road up there where it is, I think they've changed the name now, but it used to be Devil Stomping Ground Road through there.
Oh
So
wow.
it's interesting that if you get a chance and can get in there still, go have a look at it if you're ever around Siler City and that area. And
There's
there's
a lot of.
go ahead.
There's supposed to be a somewhere in Pennsylvania, which is be just right in my neck of the woods. I need to do some reading about it. I've heard about it since I moved up here. Some sort of town or city that's completely abandoned that you can't really get into anymore. I've heard stories about it, and I've not done the research.
There's one like that in the Smokies too, an old abandoned town up there that when the park took over, those people moved out of there, and some of those buildings are still standing. But I think I know the one you're talking about. You ever listen to Strange Familiars with Tim Renner and his wife Allison?
No.
Podcast, and they're somewhere in Pennsylvania, but a lot of their lore is Pennsylvania centric. So you might want to check that out. They talk about some really good local legends and scary stuff up there. I'll send you a link to it.
Because that would be a fun place to visit if you could even get in there anymore. And I know there's a place in Ohio, Helltown, Ohio, and I don't know if that's the official name, but it's where the coal mine is like still on fire underneath it or something
Yeah, I've
because
heard
of the
about
noxious
that.
gas. That's supposed to be a really creepy area.
And then
The
you
whole
had
town just kind of moved out.
Cuyahoga. There's a river there that got so polluted that the river caught fire and burned, and there's a lot of weird stuff like that. But yeah, I think there's a place. It may be in Pennsylvania too, where there's a underground. I think it's a coal mine or something that caught on fire, and it's still burning.
Mm. Yeah, there's just so much stuff up here in the Northeast that I'm not super familiar with yet. That would probably be fun to go check out. Like I said, so I moved up here. I became a dad almost immediately, and that takes up most of my time right now. So I don't get a chance to go out and investigate as much as I would like. But he'll get to an age where he can go with me here before too
Yeah,
long.
that'll really be fun. But I just looked it up here. Centralia, Pennsylvania is where that is. It's a coal seam fire that's been burning in, says, a labyrinth of abandoned coal mines. It's still burning. The town itself has been cut off in vehicle traffic and is more deserted than ever while it's still burning. But I'm not sure when it started burning, but it's been burning for a long time. 62, since 62.
God,
So been burning longer than I've been alive, and still burning.
that is something.
Fascinating stuff there.
Well, Steve, I'm going to have to go, my friend. I hate to cut it short.
No problem. I appreciate you coming on and talking strange stuff with me here on Everything Out There. I'll put a link to your YouTube channel in the show notes, and I'd like to have you on again sometime.
I would like that. I might do
like
some
that.
reading and maybe have some. I wasn't super prepared tonight. I apologize for
Yeah, I
that.
just kind of sprung it on you, like, hey, you want to come on tomorrow night? But I
But
appreciate you showing up. And you were in the chat tonight when my Among the Missing channel rolled over 100,000. I appreciate you being there.
absolutely,
And
I wouldn't miss
saw
it.
you over at First Floor Audio, Lee G, over there on his channel the other night. He's a good friend of mine.
Well,
He's a musical director, and he's a really talented individual.
I had to. Yeah, I checked it out one time, and now it's become one of my favorite. Kind of relaxing fun stuff that I listen to. I mean, you probably wouldn't be surprised because you read a lot of the same stuff I do probably, and some of the strange submissions and let me tell you, there's missing person stuff. But you start researching those, that can really put you mentally down in a hole for a while. I mean, you can just,
Yeah, it's just I can't imagine having a child or a family member go missing like that and not knowing, never having closure. That would just it'd have to destroy you.
and you read so much of that, and I do cold cases, and so a lot of the stuff isn't available online, so I'm having to find old newspaper articles and stuff to read to build my script, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have to read 24 articles to find new information.
Yeah.
A lot of it's the same stuff.
Something I would recommend, and we make good use of this, unsolicited endorsement here, newspapers.com. If you go there, it's you have to have a subscription to it. It's not that much. I think it's like $12 a month, but you can search decades worth of newspapers and actually pull up the articles and things and clip those out. If you watch some of my videos where we have the actual newspaper articles as part of the video, that's where we get those. So check that out. It's a good resource if you're doing those kind of cases.
Yeah, having to research that stuff, it wears on you. It's nice to have a show like First Floor Audio just to relax.
Just to relax. Yeah, that's why I like to go over there and just listen to the music and chill out, because it gets under your skin. Same with true crime. Back in the 80s, I was a stringer for local newspapers, and I covered a lot of true crime cases that I would rewrite and sell to like Startling Detective and some of those type magazines. Those people get inside your head. I would have to pull back. You start studying some of these really bad guys, serial killers and whatever. There's as Nietzsche wrote, when you peer into the abyss also peers into you. And that's true especially with the true crime, but with the missing person cases too. The faces of some of those people, they still haunt my dreams. There's cases that I'll never forget that I've covered. So it gets under your skin. And you're right. Sometimes it's best to go do something just mindless and enjoyable and chill out and take a few steps back from all that.
Yeah. And the First Floor Audio live shows are great for that. They're just
and have you been there on a Saturday night when he does the cover versions?
Not yet. I did hear him do a cover of Suspicious Minds the other day. He did a couple of Elvis pieces.
He does a lot of Elvis stuff, and he does Elvis really good. He started out doing that as a child. He was like a child prodigy, and his dad would take him around and have him sing Elvis in pubs and stuff. But all those, it's not like a karaoke show. He creates all those tracks, recreates them from scratch, and makes the music himself and then sings along with it. But he does some of those people better than the originals. Elton John, Phil Collins, just a plethora of stuff. He's truly a musical savant. But just keep on keeping on. You'll enjoy it. The more you show up over there, the more you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I plan to be there tomorrow night for I plan to be there for the majority of it at least. You'll see me in chat. I'll be hanging out over there.
I'll see you in chat. May pop in on screen. I said I was sitting in with him 3 nights a week, but I've got so much going on now. I don't have as much free time as I did. And newly married. I just got married in July 13th. And my wife, Nicole, writes for the channel, and just it's amazing. I'm the happiest I've ever been. And she's 22 years younger than I am, so I've got to step and fetch sometimes to keep up with her. But she's a powerhouse. Got multiple master's degrees, best writer that I've ever worked with. So, and we're working on some books together. And that was something I wanted to ask you about. Have you ever thought about compiling a book out of some of these things that you do?
I went to school to be a writer. That's what I wanted to be coming out of high school. And I wrote one book, and it was not very good. Back in those days, you couldn't self-publish, of course. You had to try and get a literary agent, and they would send it to publishers.
Yeah.
It was kind of a catch-22. Yeah, it was kind of a catch-22. It's hard to get an agent unless you had something published, but it's hard to get something published unless you've got an agent. And and I got so many rejection letters. I just kind of stepped
Yeah,
away
I
from
used to
writing.
collect those, but then I ended up when Amazon, opened up their self-publishing platform, I published Strange Things in the Woods over there myself, and I'd sold something crazy like 50,000 copies before I even went with a traditional publisher. But that makes it a lot easier. With my other books, they did the editing and the layout and cover design and stuff, and it's worth it. But it is fun to self-publish too. But we'll talk offline sometime. Nicole and I are starting a publishing venture, and if you've got maybe a book idea rolling around in there somewhere, we'd like to publish you.
I, I, I'd be interested. Like I said, I wanted to be a writer. I actually ended up teaching
That,
high school
that,
literature
that
for a
was me.
while.
I wanted to go into radio, and I made plans to go to the National Academy of Broadcasting, which was there in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I'd wanted to do that since I was a kid. I mean, like in the single digits. And the week that I graduated from high school, they closed their doors forever. So I
Uh,
went to University of Tennessee, and I looked into getting a degree in communications, but there was a lot of math involved, and I'm an ASPE, and numbers confuse me. And you have to know like radio stuff, wave propagation and antennas and stuff. And I told the counselor, I said, I don't want to build a radio station. I want to sit in one and talk in a microphone. So I ended up getting my degree in English. And for the typewriting I do, that's extreme overkill. A freshman English class, a composition class, a good thesaurus, and a dictionary. That's all I need. But here I am, and I've got published 19 books, and they've all been bestsellers at one time or another. Some of them just keep on keeping on. The National Park Mysteries and Disappearances, Volume 1, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, it's back at number 1 in Haunted Travel, Haunted and Unexplained Travel, I think, and number 2 in Family Travel. So, and then Strange Things in the Woods, it's been number 1 probably a dozen times. It stays pretty much in the top 10, but it's a good thing to do. And like I said, once you write a book, it's out there. You only have to write it once, and then you get to travel around and promote it. And if there's anything I enjoy more than writing, it's showing up somewhere to talk about my writing and getting that treatment. But well, I'll let you go here. But thanks again for joining us on Everything Out There. And like I said, I'll leave links to your show. And I've been listening to your videos over there. You got a good voice, and you cover a lot of good material. I'm anxious to see what you come up with next.
it's a lot of fun. It really is. The YouTube channel was something that I didn't expect to get into. I just ended
Yeah,
up with time.
I fell
I
into it
guess.
backwards. I had an interest in the horror narration stuff, and I started a channel. And I thought, well, now what do I narrate? And I thought, well, dummy, at that time I had 3 books, and I think I'll narrate stuff out of my books, stories. And I got into it that way, and one thing led to another. And here I am. This is the second time I've passed 100,000 subs on my old channel. I had over 250,000 over there, but things didn't work out. So I struck out on my own, and it took me 8 months, but I've just passed 100,000 there. So must be doing something right.
I think it's fantastic. I listen to just about everything you post.
I
Just
appreciate that.
about. I I try to, and a lot of times I might not catch it right out. I'll catch it a couple of days later, and it puts me in that zone where I can work.
Yeah.
It's inspiring in a way, and it just gets me that in that right frame of mind that I can sit down and go through my scripts and stuff. And so it's always good to have.
Glad to
So I
help out there,
appreciate what you do.
even by proxy. But thanks
But
again for being my guest, and we'll have you back again soon sometime.
I hope so, Steve. Thank you so much. You have a
Yeah,
great night, brother.
you too.
All right. All right. Bye
All
bye.
right. Goodbye. Good night. All right. That's going to do it for this show. Thanks again for joining me here on Everything Out There. I'll see you a little further on down the trail. Be good to yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton, and please tell your animals I said hi. Good night, everybody.